It is book review Sunday, and I know it has been a while. A lot has been going on. First, I got sick again, and I just couldn't do a video with me coughing my lungs out every couple minutes and sounding like a smoker. Sorry. Um, and then the school year started. I am a teacher, and the weekends. I push a lot of stuff that I don't get done during the week to the weekends. And on top of that, I simply don't have time to read as much as I would like to, which means I'm not finishing a book every week. So during the school year, there's a good chance that my book review Sundays will decrease. They definitely won't be every week. And hopefully maybe once a month. We'll just see. So now it's just going to be kind of sporadic whenever I can get it done. And today I do have 4 books to review. So let's get right to it. The first book is the second book in the Wolf Legacy series, Huntress Bound by Aimee Easterling. And since it's been a while, I'm going to do a fast recap. Ember, our main character, is a werewolf, and at the end of her first book, she accepted a human, Sebastian, as her mate, but Sebastian hasn't accepted her. And in this second book, she and Sebastian are going to continue working together to try to find her missing brother, Derek. And during their investigation, Sebastian is going to get arrested and kidnapped by a government agency called Shrita, I think is how the author wants us to pronounce it. It's Shrita in all capital letters, and we don't know what it stands for. But Ember is certain that they are a government agency who is trying to prove the existence of werewolves and that her brother has also been kidnapped by them. So the entire plot of the second book is to rescue Sebastian from these government people who have arrested and kidnapped him. So I give Huntress Bound 4 stars. What I liked, I love that the female main character is the one who is saving the male love interest. Usually it's the other way around. The girl gets kidnapped and the guy has to come save her. This time it's the opposite, and I love it. I love it that Ember is the supernatural character and Sebastian is the human character. Sebastian is the one who needs rescuing, and Ember comes to his rescue. The second thing I like is that Ember and Sebastian balance each other out. Sebastian has mental strength and Ember has physical strength, and they are going to need to work together to escape the government compound and escape the angry werewolves who are now going to go after them because Sebastian knows their secret. And humans aren't allowed to know that werewolves exist. Which brings me to one of the things that I wish were a little bit different with the series. So another reminder is that Ember's story is the third of a larger series. So there is Wolf Rampant Hiding from Alpha, a trilogy in which our main character is named Tara, and she has to learn to accept her werewolf heritage. She's run away from it and now she's back in it, and she needs to accept her heritage and accept her alpha mate. The second trilogy is the Underground Alpha trilogy, which is about another female character named Fen, who is what's called a halfie. And she's half human, half werewolf. And she also, like Tara, needs to learn to accept she is who she is and build a life around that acceptance. Then we get to Ember, and Ember is Tara's adopted daughter, technically her niece, her Tara's mate's brother. There, that's a mouthful. Is Ember's biological father, but he abandoned her when she was the day she was born, and so Tara and her mate, who is Ember's biological uncle, raise her. So they are her parents. She calls them mom and dad. Okay, so we have these, before Ember's story, we have 6 books of world building and culture building and history building of this werewolf shifter society that Aimee Easterling has created. And then we get to Ember's story, and some of the stuff, particularly where human mates fall into play, doesn't fit what we saw in Tara and Fenn's story. And I know I said that the last time I reviewed one of Ember's books. But it's a continuous confusion and struggle for me as a reader. And so the change in culture and politics still hasn't been explained. Humans who learn about werewolves get killed, and werewolves and humans are not allowed to be together as a romantic couple in Ember's world. But we know from, if anyone who has read Tara's trilogy and Fenn's trilogy, we know that wasn't true 10 to 15 years prior. The pack that Tara and her mate Wolfie create is full of halfies, and several human mates are in that pack as well. Then we get to Fenn's story. Fenn herself is a halfie. Her mother is a human, and she and her mother reunite in her trilogy and create their own pack where her human mother is a part of the pack. And so Ember, believing that she can't be with Sebastian and these other wolf characters that we meet trying to kill him, show that this older version of acceptance no longer exists, but we still don't know why. Now, I understand that you don't want to just dump a bunch of exposition into a story, but there are ways to explain it so that the reader can figure it out, and that still hasn't happened by the end of the second book. So, and then one other thing that I wish were different is there is a small love triangle in this one, and I'm not fully against love triangles. I've read some really great ones, but this one just didn't seem to work, and it's very, very short-lived, and so it felt like it was forced into the story and then taken away. And it's between Ember and Sebastian and Ember's childhood friend Malachi. And anyway, there just wasn't enough to justify and validate it in my mind. And then it ended super quick. So I think from my point of view, it would have been better to just really have Malachi as a friend or an unrequited love type of thing rather than an actual love triangle. And the heat level is warm. Ember and Sebastian have a few physical moments, but Sebastian doesn't know about mates and werewolves yet. And so he can't accept her as his mate. So we're still heading into the next book with them tiptoeing around their romantic relationship. So if you like a female lead who is the hero and the supernatural character, if you like Opposites Attract and Forbidden Love, then you will probably like Ember's Wolf Legacy series by Aimee Easterling. Second book is Bloodstone by Helen C. Johannes, and she is one of my favorite fantasy authors. She has written 3 high fantasy romances. Other 2 I've already read long before I started this channel, so I haven't had a chance to talk about them. But I do want to give a plug for them because they're so good. The Prince of Valthay Ridge, and its sequel, The Lord of Drew Marwyn, are so good. But this one, Bloodstone, is not connected to the other two, but it's still really good. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Our main female character, Mariana, is the daughter of a jeweler, and she has been dreaming about this man every night who is her lover in her dreams, but she can't see his face. So during the day, she looks for him. And because of his existence in her dreams, she turns down all of the men in her village who are interested in her. Our main character, Durin, has been cursed for 15 years. If you look upon his face, you will die. And so to save everyone from his curse, he covers himself from head to toe in black clothing, and he has been given the nickname of the Shadow Man, and he is a feared legend in the land. And he has something Mariana's father needs: bloodstones. Bloodstones are gems made from dragon's blood. And on their journey to find these bloodstones, Mariana runs into Durin and learns that he is her dream lover, and she is terrified because he's the Shadow Man, and she doesn't want to be with the Shadow Man. Durin, on the other hand, is he wants to be with her, but he fears he will accidentally kill her because of his curse. And so they fight the attraction they have for each other, but Durin eventually gives into his urges and uses Mariana's companionship as a bargaining chip to save her father from the real monsters called the Crad. So he says, I will save you guys from the Crad if you come and live with me. And then the story goes into the Beauty and the Beast direction from there. So I give Bloodstone 4 stars. What I liked, I love the Beauty and the Beast retelling. And I've read a couple other Beauty and the Beast retellings, and I have to say it's one of my favorite retellings. Court of Thorns and Roses is also Beauty and the Beast, and I like it a lot. I feel like other fairy tale retellings, Cinderella is the most common one. And I'm not against Cinderella retellings. I've read some really great ones, but because Cinderella is usually a go-to for retellings, I loved coming across a different one that wasn't Cinderella. There's also a lot of Sleeping Beauty connections here, especially with the whole idea of meeting each other in their dreams first, falling in love in their dreams, and then they meet each other in real life. But they're not going to fall in love in real life at first. So that's where it's a little bit different from Sleeping Beauty. I also really enjoy, not just with this book, but with all of Helen's books, she has amazing world building. Her imagination is something that I aspire to. She writes excellent high fantasy worlds. So I already covered Bloodstones, gems made from dragon's blood, the history she created for the land with the existence of dragons, and now they have almost been destroyed, except for one is in a cursed sleep. The legends of all the different magical creatures that humans try to avoid. Durin isn't the only character who's cursed. We're going to learn about some other curses that different characters are going to have to figure out how to get themselves out of. And then on top of that, the existence of dragons. So it was a very, very wonderful high fantasy adventure. And the only thing that I wish, and I don't want this to take away from how great the story was, but it is just simply how I am as a reader. I wish that Mariana and Durin had met in person earlier in the book. We're almost halfway through by the time they meet in person, and it just would have been great for them to meet in person, you know, maybe a quarter or a third of the way through, to just give them a little bit more page time to get to know each other for the falling in love section. And the heat level for this one is sensual, 3 flames. So if you like high fantasy and you want your high fantasy to have romance, Bloodstone is the book for you. Our third book, we're going to jump away from fiction here. The Alcatraz Escape Files. I got this book from the souvenir shop on Alcatraz Island when I was touring the prison last December. And there were 14 official recorded escape attempts while the island or while the prison was in working order. And so this covers each of those escape attempts. It's very, very short. It's about 170 pages. The text is quite large. There's a lot of pictures, a lot of uploaded handwritten documents as images. So I don't want you to picture like a college textbook. This is a very quick read, but it's a very informational read, and I really enjoyed it, especially because when you tour the prison, the main escape attempt, that the audio that you have like these headphones on as you walk around the prison, they focus on the most famous one, the 4 prisoners who had created dummy heads to look like they were still sleeping in their beds. But there were a lot other attempts as well. And so it was really fun to read about every single one. And as a history teacher, make some historical connections with the years and what else is going on in US history. So I give this one 5 stars. Obviously, it's very difficult for me to give a history textbook less than 5 stars, though I have done it on occasion. But you're not gonna, there aren't going to be very many history books that I don't love. So the format was great for anyone. You don't have to be a big history buff to enjoy learning about this. So every single chapter is a different escape attempt. So there's 14 chapters there, and each chapter is formatted the exact same way. They have a section heading called The Road to Alcatraz, which talks about how the prisoner ended up in Alcatraz. Then they have a section called The Plan, which is the prisoner preparing to escape. Section called The Escape, that one is self-explanatory, them actually trying to escape the prison and the island. And then the final section of each chapter is the aftermath, what happened after they escaped. This is usually them being caught. Some of them die. Some of them are charged with because they ended up killing one of the guards or injuring one of the guards. So then they have to have that charge added on to the charge they were already in prison for. I also loved the connection to other historical events. So the author doesn't deliberately make Great Depression connections, but I was able to on my own. About the first 6 to 7 escape attempts, those prisoners were arrested in the early 1930s, which is when the Great Depression was going on. And obviously, I can't prove it without diving in deeper to their history. And even if I did, correlation doesn't always equal causation, but I think I can confidently say there's a good chance that the national financial crisis going on at the time played a huge part in these men's choices to turn to a life of crime, because they were probably desperate. Because most of these early prisoners, their first arrests were for bank robberies in the early 30s. And then they ended up on Alcatraz because the other prisons that were holding them, they attempted escapes there, got into prison fights, murdered other prisoners, murdered the guards, but it all started from robbing a bank in the early 30s. And so I found that really fascinating and sad, to be honest. The other historical event that there were some big connections to with some of the escapes was World War II. There was only one, compared to all the other decades, there was only one escape attempt during World War II, and the prisoner actually used the fact that that army laundry was being sent to the island for the prisoners to wash. He would take things here and there until he looked like a soldier and snuck off the island as a soldier. But he did get caught once he got to San Francisco Bay. Anyway, but another interesting World War II thing I noticed with this book is that was the only attempt during the time patriotism rose on the island. And there was also this fear that the island could get bombed as well, because Hawaii is just, you know, a ship trip away from California. So those are the two events that I found interesting. And just overall, reading about the escapes, and some of them had wives and mothers involved. And it was just very, very fascinating. And definitely a mini series for those who like to watch television. The History Channel, if they haven't already, should totally do a mini series on all of these escape attempts. So if you like history, Escape Files from Alcatraz, very good, quick read. Last book for today, Rogue Huntress by Aimee Easterling. So we're heading back into Ember's world for the third of 4 books. In this one, Ember and Sebastian are running away from both U.S. government agents as well as shifter government agents. So they have 2 enemies they need to hide from, as well as they still need to find Ember's brother, Derek. I give this one 3 stars. And we'll get to why in a minute. Now, remember, 3 stars is not entirely bad. It still means that I liked it for the most part. So I like in this one that the villain is truly evil and psychotic. Her name is Dakota, and we get introduced to her in the 2nd book. She's not the villain of the 2nd book, but she gets set up to be. She's one of the wolf shifters who starts going after Ember and Sebastian. And she wants to get her hands on Derek and turn him over to the shifter government called the Tribunal. And there's a few rants that she goes on about mates and love that makes me think that this stuff with Derek is personal. I think he broke her heart. But she also just simply has no empathy. And so when she's trying to find Derek, instead of finding him herself, she decides Ember needs to find him for her. And to make Ember obey her, she kidnaps Ember's 12-year-old cousin and basically says, you have this time to find Derek before I kill your cousin, an innocent 12-year-old girl. I mean, who does that? And I appreciate, not that I want Ember's cousin to get hurt, I don't, but I just feel like over the past decade or so in storytelling, a lot of villains are being created to be sympathetic characters. And I like that there's no way to sympathize with Dakota. She is just an awful person. And so whatever her comeuppance is going to be in the 4th one, crossing my fingers, because sometimes villains still just get away. Cross my fingers, Dakota gets her comeuppance. Another thing I like is that we have this 2 roads path for Ember. Does she save her cousin or save her brother? Because for the previous 2 books, she's trying to find her brother so she can save him because he is in trouble. We don't know what he's in trouble with, but we know that he's in trouble. Now she has to literally save her cousin's life, and in order to do so, she has to harm her brother. She has to turn him over to the shifter government, and he will most likely be executed by them. And she doesn't even hesitate. Yes, she feels bad, but her cousin is an innocent 12-year-old, and her brother is an adult who has made his own choices. And then Sebastian learns about werewolves. He learns about the mate bond, and he questions it. he accepts Ember as a werewolf, and he accepts her as a potential romantic partner, but they've only known each other for a week, and so he's not ready to just dive into the mate bond, which I really appreciate, because as much as I like fated mate stories and romances, I don't like it when the story is written so that the bond is the be all and all of the relationship. I like the bond to help them meet, to help bring them together, but I still want them to actually fall in love. And so that's what Sebastian is asking for, and I love that he does that. What I wish was different, and once again, there's a fourth and final book, so things can come together nicely towards the end. We finally get our explanation on what I've been complaining about the past two books, but it's one that I'm struggling with. So humans will get killed if they learn about werewolves, but we know there's clearly human mates from past stories. So how does that work? This is what we're explained in this third book towards the end. It's something called honorary werewolf status. If a werewolf's wolf half chooses a human as a mate, then that human becomes an honorary werewolf so that they can live with their mate, learn about werewolves without being killed, and join the pack. And so, and I think that's a fine explanation. I just think it came too late. It was never explained in the first 6 books, where we see human after human after human encounter, be in these packs with their mates. And if that existed, then Ember didn't need to spend the first 2 books freaking out about Sebastian potentially being killed for knowing about her wolf half of her identity. So I think it's going in the right direction. Like I said, I'm going to repeat myself. It's the explanation just came too late in the series after all of this other world building. But I definitely think it's something that can be explored and expounded upon in the 4th and final book. And this is going to be a spoiler, and I'm sorry, but Sebastian and Ember are not together at the end of this 3rd book. And for a romance, this is a very drawn out romance. For them to go a full 4 books to get together is very, very long for a romance. And so as much as I appreciate Sebastian questioning the mate bond, I wish everything had like shifted, earlier, so that I'd rather them be together at the end of the 3rd book and then face this new partnership, face the problems of the 4th book as a partnership. They can still have partnership problems. But like I said, for a romance, this is very, very drawn out for the characters to officially get together. But I'm still holding out for the 4th one. It doesn't mean this is a bad book. It doesn't mean it's a bad series. I have obviously read this far. I think Aimee Easterling's world building is very interesting and unique for shifter books and shifter world building. So I am going to stay loyal to her and finish this final book to see how she ends it. And that is a month's worth of reading from me. I'm not sure when I'll get back on, but click that subscribe button so that you can be notified the next time I publish a book review Sunday. See you next time.